Disclaimer! I'ma poke fun at this guy a little bit. I've got a pretty good fan base, and I think they can take a joke. But in case anybody takes me too seriously, just know that I love my fan base very, very much. Kudou, I have been trying out this build of blue/white. I know that the videos for these colors won't be out for a while, but could I have some of your insight on this? Thanks. Well, sure, let's see what this guy's got. Oh. Yeah, we need to fix this up a little bit. Doctor! Whew. Let's start from the top. Dash is awesome, no change needed, but we need to look at your friends. This lineup should never happen. Blue-white is one of the most powerful late-game sweeping decks in all of MLP right now. So the first thing we need to do is create a good, solid friend lineup that takes advantage of how powerful blue and white is late game. Needless to say, this deck is not going to be sweeping any late game. Let's start our procedure by cutting off all of the fat. Jetstream admittedly is a really good card, but in blue-white you have better options. So no on that one for now. Cerulean is awesome. Emerald Green is normally a really good choice because we like our 2/2 vanillas, but in this case, because our deck is so late game, we can do something a little bit different. Holly's the best card in all of blue, good choice. The Pony Guard is early game and blue-white is late game. So no. Is that Rainbow Shine? Why on earth are you running Rainbow Shine? What friend are you trying to unexhaust? Even if your opponent plays something that exhausts your friends, who told you that mattered? There's not a single positive to Rainbow Shine being in this deck. Next. This rarity makes blue-white a complete monster. She stays. Is that Berry Dreams? No. Bad fan base. Look what you did. Berry Dreams is the worst card in the entire game, and I never want to see it in any of your decks again, ever. But Kudou, you can use her effect to draw a card. Surely Berry Dreams is a staple that should be in every deck. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a turn card, displaying every action you're allowed to take during your turns in the MLP card game. Oh, what's that? What's that top one say? What is that? You can pay 1 action point to draw a card. You can do it as many times as you want to, and draw as many cards as you want to, regardless of the deck you have. And you're not stuck with an awful 1 vanilla on the field. So maybe instead of using Berry Dreams, we could just pay 1 to draw a card whenever we need a card draw and then play a good card. Yeah, I think we should all do that from now on and pretend that Berry Dreams never happened. I love you guys, but sometimes. Featherweight is awesome and also adorable. This card is horribly outclassed by a card called Save Your Fare. Never use this card if you're not already using Save Your Fare. Pearly Stitch is an awful, awful card. On a scale of 1 to Berry Dreams bad, it's at least a 7. Newsflash, your opponent is never going to waste resources trying to move a 1-power pony. Ever. And the fact that she has a color requirement is almost a little bit insulting. The 1/1 vanillas are normally a really good idea if your deck is trying to do something early game, or if you have a lot of color requirements you need to meet. Highest white color requirement you have to meet in this deck is white at 2, and you don't really need that much effort to hit it. So in this case, you need to lose Noteworthy. Sugar Twist can stay because she pays for her own power and also unlocks all of the white cards in our entire deck. Also, unlike Noteworthy, when she's already on the field, you can pay 2 to move her without feeling too bad, whereas with Noteworthy, you would have to pay 2 to move a 1 power, and that's just not good. So these are the cards we're going to take out. I'll give you a second to analyze, breathe in, breathe out. We're going to make this competitive. This is the friends list we're going to use today. The list uses a core I built a while ago called Hollytavia, which is about using Holly Dash to move Octavia around the board and make it almost impossible for your opponent to move. I also don't want to just make this a cut, copy, and paste deck, so I'm going to try to keep some of the ideas you came up with in your deck alive, but I'm going to make them a little more streamlined so they can actually do something. I've already kind of explained Sugar Twist. We're going to play her at 3 to make sure we can always unlock Octavia and Rarity. The idea of using Truly Outrageous Rarity is actually a theory that I had back when I was experimenting with white. The idea was to use Holly Dash to move Rarity onto a problem, and then immediately solve it and move Rarity home to get the bonus points again. The main problem is with her low power, you can't do it on any of the really big 3-point problems. It's going to take a little bit of setup, but we're going to make it work for this deck. I will say though, it is best you don't run it at 1 and you try to get 2 or 3. Octavia is one of the core parts of the deck. As I stated before, the main combo you're going to be using is use either Wildfire or Holly Dash to move Octavia onto a problem, and all of a sudden your opponent can't really do anything about that problem. If they do try to move characters over to keep up with you, then they have to pay so much that in the end you're gonna win the action points race. Whenever you move a Holly Dash or a Wildfire, this is the main card that you want to be moving along with it. She also has 4 power, which is ridiculous. Even if you can't get her moved around with a Holly Dash or a Wildfire, just paying the 2 to move her around is still worth it. You're paying 2 for 4 power. Featherweight is also a really good card for moving around. He does only have 2 power, but you would be amazed how many face-offs this guy can win. If your opponent gets lucky and flips over a card with like 5 power, and then you have Featherweight there too, and they have to flip over another card that only has like 2, oh man, I can't even tell you the satisfaction of having to deal with the 2 instead of the 5. In more defensive versions of this build, I like to run Featherweight at 3 because his effect stacks, but in this more aggressive build that you've come up with, we're actually only going to run it at 2. On the blue side, we're going to be running 3 Cloud Chaser. There are very, very few cards in your deck that actually pay for themselves with power. They mainly cost 1 action point over how much power they have. But with Cloud Chaser's ability, you can make them pay for their own power and still keep their effects, which is pretty cool. Her effect also stacks, so if you can get 2 Cloud Chasers in play and tap both of them, then you can play your friends for -2 action points pretty much every turn. Octavia for 3 action points? Can I get a what? I have no idea why they made this card so good. It only has a color requirement of 2, and it has 4 power. And on top of all of that, it only costs 4 action points and has an amazing effect. Not sure why Interplay did that. I think it's their novicity showing, but we're gonna take it. Holly Dash is what I like to call the chauffeur of the deck. She chauffeurs all of your other characters around the field, and it's amazing. Her effect also does some really, really ridiculous things. In fact, let me show you one. I pay 2 to move Holly Dash to this problem, move Holly Dash for free, move Holly Dash for free, move Wildfire for free, move Wildfire for free, move Wildfire for free, move my Rainbow Dash main character for free, use Rainbow Dash's effect to pay 1 and move one of my other friends. I choose Octavia. This is obviously an exaggeration and probably will never happen in a real game, but that was 3 action points for 25 power, and Octavia's effect. And I did all of that within the parameters of the rules. Every single move I just made right there was completely legal. I can already hear some of you cracking your knuckles getting ready to type in the comments. Oh, but you can't actually do that. Holly Dash and Wildfire only proc when you're paying the 2 to move them. And to that I say, you, for the time being, are wrong. Interplay has only stated that Holly Dash and Wildfire's effects proc when you are moving them by choice. If your opponent played a card that forced you to move one specific character, then their effects wouldn't proc. But if you're playing a card that gives you the choice of moving them to a problem, then their effects do proc. I do think once Interplay realizes how broken this is, they will change the rules, but for the time being, that was legal. And even though things won't be taken quite that far, it's still an amazing thing to keep in mind. Wildfire is exactly Holly Dash, but cheaper. You pay 2 action points, you get 2 power. Still pays for herself, still only has a 2 color requirement, and still gives an awesome effect. Cerulean Skies is technically an early game card, but he does get to stay because he has Swift. Normally 1 power ponies when they're in play are pretty useless because you have to pay 2 in order to move them anywhere, but with Cerulean Skies you're paying 1 to move a 1 power pony somewhere, and that's okay. Winged Wonder is an amazing card, although a little hard to get a hold of right now. When you first play it, you can move up to 3 of your friends to Rainbow Dash's problem for free, which does proc Wildfire and Holly Dash's effects, which leads to even more people being brought over. And after you've played it and it's already on the field, it has Swift, so you can pay 1 to move 2 power around. Overall, an amazing choice for this deck. Let's look at your events and resources. Dig Deep would be okay if we ran a deck with high color requirements, but we don't. Facing Problems is great when blue's pairing with something like yellow or pink, but it's really not that good here. This card is flippin' awesome. So is this one. Ponyville Express is way too reliant on your opponent playing a lot of troublemakers, and really Yellow Power Sprite's the only one that's in everybody's deck.
Full free again is kinda good, but we can outclass it with white cards. Ever since the rules of Rarity's Fabulous Hat were changed, it's not a very good card. At least not in an offensive deck. If you're using it in something like pink or purple, it would actually be a lot better. But here, no, 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 no.
Okay, take a good look. And the changes. The blue is powerful because it controls our movement on the board, but the white gives us an interesting option. The white events and resources will keep our opponent in their place and control their movement while we're accelerating ours. Sort of like running really fast and also dropping thumbtacks as you go. Standstill is a very powerful card that belongs in every white deck. After your opponent moves a character, you can play this for free to move them back to their original location. This card's main use is if your opponent is trying to move a character from their home to one of the problems, then you can move it right back to home. They can just pay 2 to move them again, but they just paid 4 for an action that should have only cost them 2. That's going to put them behind. All of that for a card with 0 cost is pretty amazing, and we also have 5 power, so if we happen to flip it during a face-off, it still helps. What Went Wrong is one of my favorite blue cards. There are these times where your opponent gets really lucky and flips a card with 5 or 6 power, and you feel awful because you lose a face-off that you should have won. There will also be times where you and your opponent tie in power, and it comes down to the next card that you flip. In both of these scenarios, What Went Wrong is a cheap and effective way to make sure that you win those disputes. An offensive blue deck should not try to function without Gotta Go Fast. During any kind of face-off, whether it be a double face-off, problem face-off, or troublemaker face-off, you can pay 1 measly action point to move one of your characters to a problem. I shouldn't even need to explain why that's so good. It's especially good here because it can catch your opponent off guard, and if you move like a Holly Dash or a Wildfire, then guess what? Proc. Move another character for free. It's just too good. Besides, you can irritate your opponent with annoying Sonic the Hedgehog puns. Gotta go fast. Undercover Adventure isn't really necessary, but it is a cool tech. It has no requirements and only costs 1 action point. With all the extra rarities and dashes, you'll be surprised how often you get the double extra card off of this. I bumped it up to 3 to fill space. Tangled Koi 4 is one of the best resources in the entire game. You put it on one of your opponent's friends, and that friend cannot move. Your main use with this is going to be selecting one of their strongest friends at home and locking them in place. There, no more moving away from home. It's also great against the mirror match, because if you lock down that Holly Dash or that Octavia, then it really slows down their gameplay. For the last bit of your main deck, let's look at your troublemakers. To be honest, you hit the perfect number of troublemakers. In fact, this lineup isn't necessarily even that bad. All of these cards are good except Brown Parasprite. Listen to me. Nobody cares about having to discard cards off the top of their deck. Forcing me to discard a card off the top of my deck doesn't affect my hand size, my field size, any of my character's powers, my action points, nothing that you're trying to focus on. I understand you want to run it because there's like an off chance that maybe you'll discard something good, but there's just as equal a chance that you won't discard something that's good. Pointless. Lose it. Also, while the Parasprite Swarm is technically a good card, it's not that good here because it's only good in the early game. Besides, running it at 1 is absolutely pointless. If you play it any time after turn 4, then it's not going to have any effect. My lineup keeps your numbers but centralizes it and makes it a little more mid-game friendly. We all know Yellow Parasprite's good. Keep it at 3. It's a good card anytime during the game because it affects your opponent's hand size. Deciding between Timberwolf and Manticore is kinda tough. Timberwolf is a tiny bit more powerful than Manticore, but it's also more costly and gives up more points. Manticore is still incredibly effective and doesn't cost as much. You could really go based on personal preference and experience here, but putting in 2 of one of these cards will help you out a lot. I think just about every blue deck should run a Huizotl. Not necessarily for the reasons you're thinking. A Huizotl stops really early game swarm decks like yellow heavy decks, and it frightens all of your opponent's friends so you can use it as a control tactic. Because your movement is so free, you can easily control where your characters are going to be so they don't get affected by the your friends get frightened thing. Even better, as soon as it's flipped over, you can rush over and defeat your own villain to get that easy 2 points.
I won't bother nitpicking your problems, because technically there's nothing wrong with your problem lineup, but here's my idea for what you should run. Problem with Parasprites is probably the best blue problem. It makes your opponent more hesitant to try to slow you down using Troublemaker cards, and it takes your opponent 8 to solve. With all the crazy movement in this deck, getting the bonus 3 should be no problem for you. Most of our problems are going to be like that. It's going to take a lot for your opponent to solve, and it's going to take a lot for you to solve, but because you're running so much faster than your opponent, it should actually take you, like, no problem whatsoever to get these conditions filled. Problems with a bonus of 3 are also really easily abused by Rarity. This should be your starting problem, pretty obvious. Who is Gabby Gums is another 3-point card. I don't know how often you'll be using this problem's effect, but it's another card that can get you a very easy 3 bonus points, and can be abused by Rarity. It's a Twister, isn't quite as beefy as the other cards, but you do need a couple of problems that you can solve a lot easier, just in case things aren't going your way. You can also use its effect to continuously ready your Cloud Chaser to make it twice as effective, getting to play friends at -2 instead of -1 if you've only got one in play. This also works for your opponent, so be careful. Finally, clearing gloomy skies is our absolutely perfect problem. Gives 3 points, is solved by blue and white, which will be working together anyway, and takes your opponent 9 to solve. Its effect isn't too shabby either. If you have 2 Pegasi on your problem, then you get an extra +1 during face-offs. Not really the best effect in the world, but everything else makes up for it. One last thing I want to talk about is budget options. 7 of the cards I mentioned that you should put in your deck are secret rares, and they might be kind of hard to get a hold of. And if you don't want to spend all the money trying to get a hold of them, then I do have some ideas for what you can replace them with. It won't be quite as good, mind you, but it should be competitive enough to make up for the lack of secret rares. Savior Fair is a very, very good card. The turn it comes into play, you can give another one of your ponies +2, which surprisingly matters. It also pays for itself in power and has Inspired, and Inspired is a really good effect. Controlling what your opponent draws and flips over in face-offs is just crazy. Jetstream is always viable for blue. Paying 3 for a 4-power pony during face-offs is pretty good. She's not quite as good at solving problems, but she has what you need if your opponent's trying to lock you down with troublemakers or if you're in a lot of problem and double face-offs. F-Stop lets you recycle some of your really good events. Playing a standstill every single turn is just hilarious. I can't even explain to you how awesome it is. During your turn, you pay 1 action point and you get it back in your hand, and then during your opponent's turn, you play standstill as soon as they try to move something. The lulls are endless. The other events are also viable options to get back, like the one that lets you flip extra cards if you have a Rarity and Rainbow Dash at a problem. And Gotta Go Fast is always a fun thing to have as well. Nestweaver Rarity is a good replacement too. It only costs 3 action points, and it only has 2 power, but it has a great effect. When it comes into play, you can take any card you want from your discard pile and put it back in your hand. That recycles a lot of stuff. Another Tangled Koi Fur, getting one of your friends that's been discarded back. And it even recycles events just like F-Stop. On top of that, she also has Inspired, and I've already explained why Inspired's good. Having more of it is just even better. This is my recommendation, but if you want to move the numbers around, then go right ahead. This is just the setup I would use if I were going to use the budget cards. Well, those are all of my fixes. Hopefully the operation was a success. Personally, I think the deck is going to make a full recovery. If you enjoyed my deck doctoring, then it would help me out if you left me a like. Have a deck you'd like me to look at, or just have something you want to say, then leave it in the comment section below. And finally, subscribe to stay up to date on the latest Kudou news. This is Kudou of the TGN Network, signing off. I bid you adieu.